with Bloomberg Quint.
Good evening, you're watching Primetime. I'm Tamanna Inamdar.
And my name is Ayush Alavadi. Let's have a look at today's headlines. Finish what you've started instead of announcing new schemes. That's the message coming in from Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian to the government just 2 days before Arun Jaitley presents the union budget.
Investors lighten positions ahead of the budget. Sensex sheds 250 points on across-the-board selling.
Indian Oil Corporation shines on higher crude prices. Third quarter profit jumps more than twofold on inventory gains.
The government drops its attempt to take over Unitech, tells Supreme Court it will withdraw its plea in the National Company Law Tribunal.
India's biggest ride-hailing startup, Ola, is all set to make its debut in Australia. The company sees huge opportunities for growth in Australia.
And India's largest milk cooperative, Amul, is shifting focus towards restaurant and catering space. Plans to increase the contribution of sales to institutions from 7 to 8% to 25 to 30% in the next 5 years.
And BJP and AAP leaders spar over ceiling drive in the capital. Delhi's Chief Minister Kejriwal accuses the BJP leaders of shying away from discussing the ceiling drive initiated by the Supreme Court-appointed monitoring committee. Well, let's start off with our top story. A day after presenting the economic survey, India's chief economic advisor said that the government must focus on executing existing reforms on the ground rather than make new announcements. Speaking to Bloomberg Quint, Arvind Subramanian said that ensuring existing reforms show results on the ground will help kickstart the investment cycle. Here are his top 5 takeaways from that conversation.
I think governments consolidate, as this government has done steadily over the last 3-4 years, because it believes in consolidation, it believes in macro prudence and macro stability, and that will continue. I don't think one should be, obsessed with any one number for debt or deficits. But so I think it's completely consistent to be, absolutely prudent and responsible, and undertake a path of steady consolidation without being necessarily wedded to any one number. India's potential is, somewhere, under reasonable assumptions, is somewhere around 8+ and I think the more we get investment up, the higher obviously that potential can be. But I don't necessarily assume, because remember, we still have a lot of excess capacity. So if growth reaches 7.5, 8, I'm not at all sure that that's going to start leading into higher inflation necessarily. So potential output calculations are important, but I think there's too much uncertainty around those estimates for us to be really confident about saying that at some level inflation will start picking up. One of the most important determinants of weak investment in the past has been the twin balance sheet challenge, right? I think with resolution and recapitalization, those are major policy initiatives, aimed at reversing that investment decline. I think I would caution against this, you've done something and then you say you need to do more. I think the policy agenda for this year would be ambitious and ample if government just, completed all the things that it started. Support agriculture, stabilize the GST, and privatize Air India, and complete these resolution recapitalization efforts as well. So, I'm warning against the kind of temptation of saying, you need to do more and more and more. I think there's a lot that's being done. Finishing them could bring back the animal spirits as well, along with a cooperative world economy. During the period of the infrastructure surge in the mid-2000s, we had a lot of public sector banks lending to private sector companies. Now, when those loans turned sour and we found ourselves with this twin balance sheet challenge, we found that it was very difficult to exit from that because of this, this zeitgeist of stigmatized capitalism. That is that, any attempt to get out of this always is open to the charge that you're letting the promoters off the hook, etc., etc. So if we don't want that experience to repeat itself, I think ipso facto it means that we probably should have less public to private lending going forward. That the private sector should be funding needs should be met by a variety of other sources, bond markets, but also more private sector participation in the banking system itself. It's a stock calculation because we have access to GST and EPFO data. It's just something that's very novel and surprising and interesting about the Indian economy, that the level of formal employment is much greater than we believed. But it's a stock calculation. It's not a calculation on how many jobs were created in 2017-18 or 2016-17. I just want to clarify that.
Now, a little over a day to go and Budget 2018 has taken centre stage. We spoke to former RBI Governor Bimal Jalan and former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian on their expectations from this year's budget. Listen in.
One thing that you'd like to hear, even if it's signaling, from the budget this time, and one thing that you would want to not hear for sure, what would those be, sir?
No, that I don't know. What one would absolutely like is the delivery system to improve to a point where our poverty alleviation rate is much higher. And whether it can be organized jobs, it can be unorganized jobs, or whatever it is. And the delivery system diversion should be minimized, which is being done through technology. So we should introduce, as fast as we can. Everybody has mobile phones now. That helps. Aadhaar card, that helps in trying to make sure that the banking system, or whatever we can do through the banking system to transfer resources to the poor, that it's done. So it's a job that can be done, and we have what you might say, the resources to do it, inputs to do it, and the mechanisms to do it now with Aadhaar and mobile phones. So let's hope over a period of time it will happen.
I think the judicial reform, I have been arguing for it for the last 10 years at least. I wrote it in a paper in 2002, which was published in EPW. I was happy that this whole issue of judicial, legal, police reform is coming, because people have traditionally in their minds separated out economics from these sort of issues of personal safety and security. But you know, a market structure which we assume depends on the rule of law. You know, the kind of free market or democratic market structure is fundamentally based on the rule of law. And I think not enough economists, probably because they are trained in Marxian economics, too many of our economists know Marxist economics more than market economics. But judicial reform, police reform is kind of the foundation on which markets are built, free and competitive markets. I mean, you can always have some kind of a market, a monopoly. So I was quite happy at that.
The economic survey has, among other things, reignited the debate over jobs. The survey says that formal jobs outside the agricultural sector are considerably greater than current beliefs. The survey does this by defining formality of jobs through GST data.
Now, and as per this, those formally employed in the economy along with government employees is 12.7 crores, over half of 24 crore people employed in non-agricultural activities as per the latest NSSO data. Importantly, this data comes at a time when the debate over the reality of India's job crisis is raging. Now we have with us Chief Economist at State Bank of India, Soumyakanti Ghosh, joining us on the show. He has, of course, co-authored now the famous study titled Towards a Payroll Reporting in India, which uses EPFO data set to estimate the number of jobs being created in the country. Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh, for speaking with us again this evening on Prime Time. I'm going to get straight to it. The 7 million figure from your survey, from your paper, is what has become controversial. Because you have used data of a certain period from the EPFO database to extrapolate it and with adjustments conclude that 7 million new jobs were created last year at a time when many say that there is a big job crisis. Could you first explain how you came to that figure, sir?
See, I think the report is out in public domain, and this report we have estimated. I'll just give one corollary to it. Yesterday, the economic survey came out with the data of how much was the estimate of total payroll stock in the country, and their number was 7.5 crore. And our number is actually 7.7 crore. So that exactly validates the data which we have given out. Now, in terms of the EPFO, ESIC and the NPS, you need to understand that these are basically payroll data. That means if one is on the payroll and getting a continuous salary. So the point which we are trying to make out is that we looked into the EPFO contribution. We made the adjustment of the people who were coming from the informal sector to the formal sector by deleting them. For example, the people who joined under amnesty scheme. We also took into account the fact that if some people has retired from the EPFO scheme, his contribution became zero. So we deleted all zero accounts, and we only took those people in the age group of 18 to 25 who are clustering around the age of 22 to calculate the new age number. In fact, we deleted 55 lakhs number of people who were above the 25 in the EPFO age group, and in the ESIC age group we only took 18 to 22. We also removed all overlaps between EPFO and ESIC, and also under the NPS we removed the people who are enrolled under Atal Pension Yojana, and also were people who are enrolling from the corporate scheme. So basically it was a detailed exercise. All the nitty-gritties were taken into account, and at the end of the day, if you look into one of the numbers which has been given out, that it says that the total number of outstanding payroll in the country as on March 2017 was 9.2 crore, which is significantly lower than the NSSO estimates of 10.8 crores. So this gives you a validation that now our numbers are actually on the lower side what we have given out.
Okay, let me just read out for you, sir, some of the points which have been made in various articles since that report came out, questioning that data, because I think it's only fair that you respond to this. One of those points is that if there were 7 million formal jobs being added annually, that would be more than the number of skilled workers entering the workforce every year. That's 6.6 million. And would that really be possible? Does that mean that we are creating 3 times more non-farm jobs than the United States does in its current period of a mild economic boom? And I'm quoting here from an article written by Praveen Chakravarti recently. recently. He's also asking that can you really extrapolate data which is taken from between April to November 2017 and then come to this figure? What would your response be to some of these questions?
See, I'll tell you one thing over here. Yes, I have looked at the article, but most of the article, the points which the article has actually made in an earlier article, that has been repeated. And some of the points which has been made in the article are actually completely tangential in terms of making the database public and other things. I don't want to go into those things because that are a little bit personal in nature. But your point exactly to the 6.6 million job, I think that's a completely misplaced notion which have been put out. If you look at the presentation, out of 15 million people, 8 million graduates were coming, of which only 6.6 million could have completed the course. And remember that EPFO is actually the jobs for these low skilled people. So therefore, it is the 8.4 or 9 million people who is actually not getting the jobs. So it's basically he is confusing the stock and the flow. So 6.6 million is not the comparison which we will be making with the 7 million figure which we have given out. And if you look at our number that is given in the second page, we have saying that out of 15 million people, around 9 million people are actually unskilled people, and these are the type of people who are getting jobs under the EPFO, because EPFO, remember, are people who generally pay low paying jobs, and all high paying jobs or skilled jobs, that data is not maintained by the EPFO because that is maintained by an outside trust. So that data we have not even captured from the EPFO data. So this, I think, is a misplaced criticism which has been made.
Point which was made is that does this data account for the impact of policy moves like GST and demonetization, which led to forced formalization, and on the other hand may have led to displacement of jobs in the informal sector? So if there were more jobs added to the formal sector and hence turned up in your EPFO data, does it then reflect the number of jobs which were lost or culled due to these processes?
Yes, I have 2 points to make over here. As I said in the beginning of the show, if you remember, during January to June of 2017, around 10 million EPFO accounts were added, which were actually old, and the government actually was on a drive to enroll EPFO members. And these 1 crore accounts, I mean these 10 million accounts, have been adjusted from the data. So this actually forms a part of the movement from the informal to formal. And regarding the specific point make that whether this informal job loss has been captured by this data or not, let us, I mean, EPFO data is supposed to be of the additions to the job payroll number. Now, hypothetically, let us take the let us assume that there was a there was some amount of job loss. So then the argument becomes that suppose some people had lost their jobs in the GST and say in the because of the demonetization. I am making a completely hypothetical assumptions. Now, if this has been the case, that means that people who lost their jobs were only in the age group of 18 to 25 category, because we are only taking people in the 18 to 25 category. So this basically, I mean, contradicts the point which the authors have been making, that there was job losses. So therefore, this data is actually not capturing the job losses. So my simple point is that if job loss was the only criteria which we would have taken into account, that means that only people in the age group of 18 to 25 had lost jobs during demonetization and GST, which to me looks a completely, I mean, illogical assumption to make.
Perhaps, Dr. Ghosh, this entire report became so talked about because it has been cited by the government of the day as evidence that the jobs crisis is not as bad as is being made out to be. Putting that aside, what is your view on what the current situation really is? Because we're getting into a budget, we're a day away, and the big question is, what will this government do to tackle jobs? Before that, we must answer how bad the problem is.
No, I'll also come to your point, Amana. I think here I want to make a very specific point. I think there is also has been a lot of points which has been made in the paper that consumption growth is not picking up, investment growth is not picking up. So how can we say that the payroll numbers of so much has been created? Here, let me make a simple point is that Indian consumption has been growing at the rate of steady 6 to 7% per annum. And these EPFO jobs are mostly low paying jobs. So therefore, even if suppose for example a large number of people have got jobs at the lower end of the salary, it may not make much to the consumption boom which the country actually may witness. So this is my limited point. Regarding the other point which you are saying, we have made a limited observation that the government must endeavor to give out a payroll reporting just like the other countries do, because that is the missing puzzle in our policy analysis, and we as an policy makers or any policy maker day to day face this problem. So given this limited point, even if you look into our reports, we have said that there are 25 million babies who are born during the year. So around 15 million come into the labor force on a conservative basis. So even out of that 15, 6 to 7 million people get jobs. So there is still another half amount of people who are yet to get jobs. So the job story actually what we are trying to say, if one goes to the report literally, is we are not downplaying that India requires jobs, but the only point which I want to make over here is that point number one, that in India the payroll, we need to move towards some payroll reporting. Point number two, our formal sector job creation may have been underreported, and and number three is that we now need to really skill our people, because that's the basic problem in our country. We have engineers who pass out from colleges but ultimately gets up getting jobs in the for example in small shops. So that's the point which everybody should debate, that how can we train our people so that they can get jobs who adequately compensate this. I am never saying that job is not an issue in the country, because there has been news also of declining labor force participation of the women, other things. But my limited point is that let's not digress the debate. Let's understand that skilling is also the most important issue in India today. Until and unless you don't skill your people, you will end up creating a labor force who will continuously remain on the on a lower payroll, which will not add value to them and also value to the country and value to the demographic dividend which India currently enjoys.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Soumyakanti Ghosh, for speaking with us. Dr. Ghosh, there clarifying a number of criticisms made really about the report he co-authored, which claimed that 7 million jobs in the formal sector were created annually. And the budget is just a day away. We're talking about jobs, but let's also talk about what young aspirational India wants. That's going to be the focus of the Primetime debate budget special this evening. We're talking to a disparate panel this evening. We have a young economist, a young startup CEO, and a student from IIM Ahmedabad, where we'll find out what their hopes are from the budget.
All right, moving on, Aadhaar. Well, the Aadhaar hearing continued in the Supreme Court today, with senior advocate Shyam Devan arguing for the petitioners. Arpan Chaturvedi, who was at the hearing, breaks down all the courtroom action for you.
Well, the first half of the arguments today was focused on your state resident data hubs, which are your data repositories with different states which collect and collate the Aadhaar data along with other databases. And the petitioners argued that these state resident data hubs were without any backing in law, and hence they should be completely dismantled because, again, the petitioner said that help of these, it is possible to profile people based on religion, caste, community, and of course targeting of individual and communities if the government wants it. That was one argument. Apart from that, the petitioners again argued that the entire architecture is such that it enables mass surveillance, and of course they said that they are not saying that this surveillance is happening, but the fact that the architecture is capable of mass surveillance is a fact that should lead to this whole project being dismantled. Apart from that, in the second half, they also argued on the constitutional points, and where the Mr. Shyam Devan, who was arguing for the petitioners, said that the concept of limited government is a principle which has been recognized in the Constitution through the preambles and the values enshrined in the Constitution, as well as the past Supreme Court judgments as well, and it's a well-recognized concept. And his point was that when we accept the presence of a concept of limited government, can in those situations, or in the light of that fact, can the state be allowed to have so much power where they can tell individuals that you will not be entitled to certain rights, and you will get them only if you choose to identify yourself in one single way that the government mandates. And of course, the petitioner's argument is that that cannot be done when we recognize the concept of limited government. Their point was that the state cannot be allowed to amass powers at such levels where they can have such huge dominance over citizens, because it dismantles or it disturbs the balance between the citizen and the state. So these were some of the broad arguments that happened today. Now the hearings will continue on Thursday, where Senior Advocate Shyam Diwan will continue making his arguments on behalf of the petitioners in this Aadhaar case.
And Indian markets came off record highs today. Both the Sensex and Nifty fell to around 0.7%. Losses in Kotak Mahindra Bank, Reliance Industries, HDFC and Infosys weighed on the indices, while BPCL, HPCL and Indian Oil were the top gainers.
Indian Oil Corporation beat analyst estimates in its Q3 earnings. Net profits saw more than a twofold jump, exceeding estimates for a big margin. Revenue rose 22% in line with estimates. EBITDA jumped 80%, while operating margins expanded to nearly 12%. The company announced a bonus issue of one free share for every share held, and IOC's board also declared an interim dividend of Rs 19 per share. Speaking to Bloomberg Quint's Bhanvi Arora, A.K. Sharma, Director of Finance of Indian Oil, said that they are still facing disruptions from GST and expect an impact of nearly 500 crore rupees in Q4.
Q4, I don't think there will be any impact on the marketing margin. Will continue to be normal. We are not increasing or changing the marketing margins on any of the major products.
How much impact are you seeing of GST in Q4?
See, up to the 2 quarters of this year, that July to December, the impact is around 700 crore. Maybe in Q4, we expect 400 to 500 crore more.
And the State Bank of India has increased its interest rate on high-value deposits. The hike, which is anywhere between 50 to 140 basis points on bulk term deposits of more than 1 crore, come into effect from today. The highest hike has been in the 46 to 210-day bucket. This is the second time in 3 months that SBI has revised its interest rates. It had lowered rates for retail domestic term depositors in November last year.
On to the latest in the Unitech case. The government has informed the Apex Court that it will withdraw its plea in the NCLT to take over Unitech. This comes a day after Unitech finalized a deal to raise funds to repay the home buyers. Apex Court bench disposed of the case. The court had directed Unitech to deposit 750 crore rupees by December to secure the bail for its director, Sanjay Chandra. The government had earlier filed a petition expressing interest in taking over Unitech's management. The Apex Court had ruled against that particular plea.
And India's growing love for eating out has got Amul thinking. The country's largest milk cooperative is now turning its focus to the restaurant and catering space, an area which currently contributes less than 10% of its total turnover. Charlene D'Souza caught up with R.S. Sodhi, Managing Director at Amul, to understand how the dairy maker plans to go about doing this.
You see, HoReCa segment, hotel, restaurant, catering segment, today average Indian, as the incomes are increasing, they have started eating out more. Even any function, any marriage, you see lot of value added food products are now added. So that segment is growing. Today, if you see our earnings or our sale out of the HoReCa segment may be around all India level, maybe 7 to 8%. In some Bombay, like it may be 18-20%. Average is 7 to 8%. But we expect this HoReCa segment to contribute minimum 25% to our kitty.
By when?
25%.
By when?
In another 5 to 6 years. Because we were not concentrating. Frankly speaking, HoReCa segment we were not concentrating because whatever we were able to produce, it was selling in the general market. But if you talk about developed countries, HoReCa segment is contributing 50% to the dairy, leave aside milk, all other value-added products. So we expect that besides milk, all other product category, 25% will come from the HoReCa segment. So for that, we are developing specific HoReCa products, specific HoReCa distribution network, naturally Horeca pricing also, and in which we are very good.
So you're more competitive because there are a lot of very private players who are present there.
We are competitive because Amul philosophy is there: value for many, value for money. Value for many means 3.6 million farmers. We give them the best price for their produced milk, and value for money is for the millions of consumers to whom we provide best quality, tasty product at most affordable price. So why a Horeca buyer will not buy Amul product?
Well, in big international news, originating from India, ride-hailing startup Ola is heading to Australia. The company will start inviting drivers in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth to sign up soon. With this move, Ola's competition with Uber will extend to Australia. Ola's co-founder and CEO Bhavish Agarwal has said the company sees immense potential in the ride-sharing ecosystem. Ola has 125 million users and more than 1 million drivers in 110 cities. The company said in its statement that it serves over 1 billion rides annually via cabs, street taxis and three-wheeler auto rickshaws. Both Uber and Ola are backed by a common investor, SoftBank, which has invested in Ola's parent ANI Technologies. Now, the overlap between Uber's regional footprint and SoftBank's investments in Asia have led to questions whether there might be consolidation among ride-hailing businesses or market exits. Senior analyst at Forrester, Satish Mehta, says that in terms of market entry, it makes sense for Ola to expand to Australia, as it would be tough for them to enter other regions like the Middle East or even Europe for that matter.
Ola, they are kind of operating in India since the inception, and now if they are looking for expansion, there are not many markets for them to expand. South Asia, it's limited in terms of number of rides and also the kind of revenue they can generate. Limited space for them in Middle East, Europe and Southeast Asia. So Australia makes sense for them in terms of market entry.
BJP Delhi Chief Manoj Tiwari, along with other leaders, walked out of a meeting held by Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. The meeting was held to discuss the sealing drive against illegal property being carried out by the Delhi Municipal Corporation on court order. BJP Chief Manoj Tiwari alleged that anti-social elements were present in the meeting and accused the Aam Aadmi Party of attacking BJP leaders. Delhi Congress Chief Ajay Makan today asked the AAP and the BJP to end their fake fight over the ongoing sealing drive and suggests that they instead seek relief from the Supreme Court for the traders hit by the move. The AAP government, while denying the accusation of attacking BJP leaders, blamed the BJP of digressing from the main matter.
अब वो बैठने को तैयार नहीं, बाहर जाके कुछ भी बोल देते हैं। अब आज बात करने आए थे सीलिंग पे, सीलिंग की एक भी बात नहीं, एक ही मनोज तिवारी जी ने 2 मुद्दे उठाए आप लोगों के सामने, एक 351 सड़कों का, एक अनऑथराइज्ड कॉलोनी का, दोनों का सीलिंग से कोई लेना देना नहीं। तो वो सीलिंग की बात कहते हैं, सीलिंग की बात करने जा रहे हैं, बात कुछ और ही करते हैं, क्योंकि सीलिंग के सारे इश्यूज और ये चारों इश्यूज क्यों नहीं कर रहे मेरे को अभी तक समझ नहीं आया। ये चारों इश्यूज 24 घंटे के अंदर अगर एलजी साहब, बीजेपी और केंद्र सरकार चाहे 24 घंटे के अंदर इसका समाधान निकल सकता है, पर कर नहीं रहे वो।
250 की संख्या वहां थी, वो कौन थे ये बताना आज अरविंद केजरीवाल को बहुत जरूरी है कि बीजेपी के 20 लोगों के शीर्ष मंडल को मिलने के लिए आपको 250 लोग क्यों बुलाने पड़े, वो कौन थे। मैं कहना चाहता हूं, बताना चाहता हूं आपको, उसमें असामाजिक तत्व थे, गुंडे बुलाए हुए थे और उनकी एक बड़ी साजिश की तैयारी थी। ये हमने वहां घुसते ही समझ लिया।
And the Delhi High Court today asked the Election Commission to state the facts behind its decision to disqualify 20 Aam Aadmi Party MLAs for holding office of profit. The bench asked the poll panel to file an affidavit. This comes after the EC said it wanted to respond to some of the allegations made in the MLAs' pleas challenging their disqualification. Election Commission, however, told the court that it would rely upon its opinion given to the President to disqualify the 20 Aam Aadmi Party MLAs from the Delhi Assembly. The Delhi High Court has listed the matter for further hearing on the 7th of February. Now, as India moves a step towards electoral bonds, a report by the Association for Democratic Reforms indicates that the BJP received 76.7% of the 637 crores that was donated to all political parties by 9 electoral trusts during FY14 to FY17. The Congress, meanwhile, received only 86 crores, while the remaining parties together got 61 crores. Electoral trusts are mainly financed by corporations. Now, according to government rules, electoral trusts should donate 95% of their income in a year to registered political parties. The list of top companies donating to electoral trusts include the likes of DLF, JSW Energy, Piramal Enterprises, Bharti Airtel, among others. In this fiscal year itself, the report indicates that the BJP got a total of 290 crore rupees from various electoral trusts, while the Congress received only 16 crore rupees.
Well, the United States has identified 96 of Russia's richest people as oligarchs and 104 top government figures in lists mandated under last year's sanctions law. The move, which is intended to add pressure to Russia over its alleged interference in the 2016 presidential vote, does not mean the individuals will face sanctions. The U.S. Treasury said it used objective criteria for the compilation of the list. The list includes business tycoons and top officials, including Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev and Energy Minister Alexander Novak as well. Russia said that it sees no reason to respond. Last month, Russia had warned that additional sanctions could lead to unbearable risks and dangers for relations with the US. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, also accused the Trump administration of using the sanctions to try to influence the March 18th presidential election, in which he seeks to extend his tenure. Well, Tamanna, so it's not too long to go before the budget.
Yes, and we've been doing budget specials in Primetime Debate the last few days, and of course today and tomorrow as well. But today, Ayush, we thought that we've spoken a lot about what the agri-sector needs, what to do to boost private investments, jobs. Let's talk about what young India wants. Remember, it's the last full budget before the next elections, a lot of focus on new voters. Well, we try to get a slice of that with three very different kind of panelists. One young economist, a CEO of a startup, and a student from IIM Ahmedabad. Let's see what they want from the budget. That's coming up right next.
Life